This video is called A Black Libertarian Schools You on What Racism Really Is in America. Welcome to the Shakaama live show with your host, Shakaama. So, of course, I don't run around calling myself a black libertarian, but I want to impart some sort of knowledge to you, and I want to make sure that you understand without seeing my luscious lips, my perfect nose, my piercing stare, my high cheekbones, my square jaw, that I'm a black guy and a libertarian. So instead of going on about I'm a black guy who is a libertarian and belongs to the Libertarian Party, I simply squeeze that down to black libertarian, and voila, we have a label that you can understand. That's all I ever do in my videos, so don't ever think that I'm running around labeling everything. I'm just wanting to impart knowledge as efficiently as possible, and of course I'm going off on a tangent. A lot of people buy into the whole white guilt thing. What do I mean by that? That white people, and maybe black people, say to other white people, you know you're wrong, and you're wrong just for being white. Okay, that's not how racism works. First of all, the word racism actually means the group dynamic to target another group and extract from them time, money, and energy, which all to me equates all to money, right? Because time is money is money, and energy is money. Your labor is money. This is why you have a job. You're trying to trade in labor at a declining rate as much as possible. What does that mean? You are hired because you are expected to deliver more profit than what your labor actually costs. But on your side of the table, you're trying to deliver less profit and as close to the labor costs as much as possible. That should mean that your effort into your job should be at the very closest minimum just to get you by. I know all of the big promotional signs, the promotional speakers are going to tell you that you should deliver twice as much in profit as your labor. This is how you get ahead. But that's not the economics of the deal. That's the economics of the buyer of labor. He's trying to get you to put out as much profit as possible and pay you as little as possible. And this is true, but this is not a communist notion. The communist notion is nobody buys any labor, and socialism is even worse. Nobody does labor. And then, of course, they try and throw out this propaganda that, oh, the evil capitalists are coming after you to get as much labor out of you for free and not pay you. That is not capitalism. Capitalism is literally buying labor to get as much profit as possible. If that labor also comes with excellence, they'll pay even more for that. But that's on their side of the table. I'm trying to tell you the economics of your side of the table, which is the laborer, right? So how did slavery come about? Slavery came about that silly humans were able to target black people because black people had black skin versus their group, which had white skin. So they put all the black people into one group and then put themselves into another group, kind of, not really, because they also enslaved other white people. And they also didn't care about entire groups of white people. These are the people who were not rich, were not even able to own slaves, couldn't do any labor because slavery was present, and slavery was present all through the Union, not just the South. I know your American history teaches you something completely different. But who is the promoter of this racism? The government. I'm trying to get you out of this white guilt stuff, right? The government. In fact, not only was the government racist against black people and a different class of white people too, with the Irish, they were also enforcing racism by saying you cannot teach black people. Here's the gist. Here's the other side of that story. What they're not saying. You can't teach them English. You can't teach them to read and write. You can't teach them mathematics. Here's the thing. It's not that you can't teach them. We're not dealing with puppies that you're trying to potty train. We're dealing with human beings who actually already knew how to read, write, speak their own language. Nobody ever says, hey, the Africans actually had their own language, their own culture. And ignorant, stupid white people teach ignorant, stupid white people to believe that Africans lived in huts and stuff like that. When in fact, Africans had empires and empires upon empires upon empires filled with gold, mansions, streets, and actually traded weapons to Europeans who were running around shooting each other, killing each other. Sold rifles to Europe. Your education system is horrible. Okay, let's get back to it. Racism enforced by the government. The Democrats created the KKK to completely depopulate black people, but they couldn't out and out run around and just slaughter entire, because eventually black people would stand up and just slaughter all the white people. You don't understand the demographics of the South. I mean, for all the thing about talking about race war, maybe in the North there was a chance that you could have a race war and slaughter all the black people, but not in the South. You couldn't do it. And as much as ignorant KKK Democrat Jethro is, he can count to 2, and he can see that there's way more black people than they could probably handle, even with guns. And black people had guns in those days. Why? Because black people had to hunt just like everybody else. They don't talk about this. We move up to the era where white people actually left black people alone. Yes, black people earned less as a whole, but that's talking about wealth. Wealth is different from income. There were black people with cars. That's a big deal. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal to you, but that was a big deal way back when. And I'm talking way back when. Black people had cars. Black people had houses. What you would consider almost a mansion today. Did you see the miniseries Roots? There's one section where the KKK members come in and they scream, "These N-word have sheets. I don't have sheets. How do they have sheets? How dare they have sheets and I don't have sheets?" Now, mostly the KKK, of course, are going to be the ignorant Irish and Scottish people who hated slavery. Hated, by definition then, black people, right? Because the Irish and Scottish did manual labor. They hated the fact that, let's move it up to like 2016, that these Mexicans came and took our jobs, right? This is later on when they weren't slaves and they weren't treated like garbage. They still hated slaves though, and by definition black people, because black people made labor be what? Zero. How can you compete with zero? You can't. So you have the rednecks come over from Ireland and Scotland and just be completely incensed because in Europe, America was seen as the land of milk and honey. Anybody could go there and become rich. And that was the whole point of the United States to begin with, right? That you could come over here, get an ungodly amount of land, get a slave or two. I'll hope you know, just like the welfare system says that all these black women have 15 children. You have a small population of black women, and all women on the welfare, most of them have one child. One. Most of them, like a majority of them. Same thing with the Deep South. Slaves were expensive. You had to feed. It was a human being. And it was a human being that worked from sunup to sundown. You have to keep that human being healthy and clothed and housed and medicated or, healthy, whatever. Although they say slaves, it wasn't really quite slavery because literally it was an employee that you had to completely take care of. And when I say completely, I mean completely. Most of the rest of the world didn't go for that whole chattel slavery. Chattel slavery was a United States thing. Maybe in the Middle East they have chattel sex slavery. The Middle East is known for enslaving women. I know a lot of people say, oh, the Middle East enslaved black people. The Middle East enslaved black people. Yes, that is true. But actually what the Middle East did was slaughter black men. This is of course, outside of the empire, outside of the big cities of Africa, right? Because that wouldn't happen. You just couldn't come and slaughter. Everybody doesn't understand the dynamics of Africa, that Africans were no different from Europeans. as far as technology, and we have the same exact technology. Now, it's not until you get, just like Egypt, the complete invasion of several people all at once ganging up on you. You know, like the group of football bullies that run around and in packs and terrorize little skinny nerds. Chattel slavery in the United States did not exist outside. Why? Because people were just like, oh my God, that is, I have to literally be the god of these people. I cannot be the god of these people. That is way too much energy. And it was of course, the government that kept the chattel slavery going. Outside the United States, you were a slave in name only. It was the rare occasion that you'd have some guy who really let the whole slave thing go his heads, and he beat slaves. And even then, the slaves would sue in court, especially those who had converted from their African religion to the white Christian religion. Listen, I've read the Bible. I'm an accountant. I'm a manager. I run the business. Remember, they don't have chattel slavery outside of the United States. And the Bible says, you can't do this. Even if you do call me a slave, you can't do this. And they won. Slavery ended something like 60 years before the United States. Something crazy. And not only that, the quote-unquote slaves could go anywhere they wanted to. They ran businesses. They did all sorts of stuff outside the United States. In the United States, the government enforced this chattel slavery. There are stories of quote-unquote nice owners, and it just makes common sense that, first of all, if you're not that rich, and most people are not that rich, there is nothing new under the sun, right? That's in the Bible, right? There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. In the United States right today, there are millionaires. These are people who are worth $1 million. And I'm telling you, of course, in 2016, somebody who's worth $1 million doesn't even come close to somebody who was worth $1 million in 1970. $1 million in 1970, first of all, was a tremendous accomplishment. And second of all, you were really wealthy. In 2016, you're not wealthy. In fact, a lot of millionaires who are just worth 1 million or 2 million still live paycheck to paycheck. So back in those days, if you had a farmer who's going to make his way and he buys one slave, it becomes a burden on him that he owns a slave. There are many accounts of farmers literally just losing their mind over having one slave or two slaves. And there are accounts of farmers finally coming to terms with, I can't treat this human as chattel slave. It's not efficient at all because I have to clothe him. I have to feed him. I have to house him. I have to doctor him. And I have to pay for all of that crap. Yes, he works from sunup to sundown. That's inefficient. That is not, because now I have to take my profits and care for this other human completely. And I have a wife. If you know why I'm laughing about that. So it's literally like you had a wife who does the housework all day. And I looked at some charts. The profit margins weren't so great if you were a small farmer. Just like today, this is why the farmers are going under in the United States, or have gone under, and now it's all big agribusiness. The same exact scenario. You only get the real true sense of slavery when you get to the real nitty gritty rich bastard that owns 100 slaves. And that stuff is in the Bible too. I mean, this is somebody who just has goo-gobs of money, who is so wealthy, and it doesn't matter. And a lot of times when you're that wealthy, you also don't even pay attention to the actual economics of owning a slave, owning and taking care of another human. So you have these small, tiny farmers who owns one slave or two slaves, and finally they give up and say, I can't do this channel stuff. Can you do the accounting? No, I can't do the accounting. Or I would do the accounting, but you know what? They will come and kill you and sell me off to somebody else who probably can afford me. Can you run the stocks? No, I can't do that. No. Because then if I go and try and sell your stuff for you at the market, all sorts of stuff will just happen. I mean, first of all, I'm a slave. They don't want to talk to me. They are actually more liable to beat me up, take all of your wares, and leave me for dead, and then come after you for daring to put a slave in charge of managing your farm. Forced by federal government, local government, state and local government. Racism. That's what racism really is. Let's move up. Slavery's out of the way. Then you have the golden age of the African American. That is after slavery, before civil rights. And you had countless community after community after community, because white people didn't want to be around black people because of all of those years of saying that black people are terrible, black people are horrible, and black people don't know anything, when in fact black people outside of the United States are running entire empires by themselves, literally, right? And getting paid. Oh, I forgot to mention that part. When I said outside of the United States, people were called slaves in name only. Literally, it was in name only because they got stipends. They got a paycheck. And this is in keeping with the Supreme Court of the United States, after slavery was struck down, said in a ruling of a man hiring himself out to do a job for labor to be paid for it, said that if a man by contract hires himself out to be a slave, this court is put in place to uphold contracts. We cannot then go against the contract, although slavery has been abolished in these United States. Do you understand what they're saying? They're saying that a job is, by definition, slavery. Outside of the United States, that was slavery. You paid your quote-unquote slave. Your slave was the manager. Your slave was the accountant. Your slave was the contractor, was the carpenter, was the architect. Slave. I mean, it doesn't quite mean what you think it means, but the people in power know exactly what it means. And when people in the Libertarian Party, in the freedom movement, say that we have modern day slavery, we actually do, because then we take a look outside of the United States at quote unquote slavery, and that's exactly what slavery was. It was a job, having a job. Yes, you were called a slave, but you did exactly what most of you listening to me actually wake up and go do free of choice. I'm going to go to my job and make money. And I think you're doing that wrong. I already said it was the society way back in the day that when you came of age, you went into your family business, and your family had picked out a little slot that they were good at, and that's what they offered in services or goods to the rest of the society. I am a candlestick maker. My son will grow up. I will teach him how to make candles, and he will be fantastic. And that is what we will have. He will work in my candlestick shop, and when I die, he will inherit the candlestick shop. God bless him. Thank God that candlestick making never went out of business, because now we have these very lovely apple cinnamon candles and all sorts of stuff that I put into my house and light, so that when people come over, they can think that I actually cook. Moving up to the communities, the golden age of black people in the United States. When white people were convinced that black people were just terrible people, blah, 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 blah. So they were left alone to their own devices, living in the little shanty towns. We didn't call them shanty towns. Little tiny communities, little tiny cities. They were even cities outside of the white cities. This is when we didn't have suburbs, right? And the black people had to fend for themselves. They had to have their own fire trucks. They had their own police. They had to have their own this, that, and the other. So then we have black people trading with black people in small communities, going and working for white people, not being allowed to spend their money in the white community whatsoever, then bringing in that money from the white community back to the black community, which then they bought their groceries and they bought the malt shops, and they got a taxi, they went to the movies and what have you, right? Do you see what's going on here? So we have this very insulated community, and they're bringing outside money into the community. Nothing ever flows out of the community because white people don't come to the black community. So I said it's the golden age of the black community because at this point, this segregation was really working in favor of black people. It was not working against black people. Of course, this whole civil rights thing, the desegregation was started by white people and Jews. It was not a black person that said, you know what, I really hate that I have a 2-story house and sheets and I can afford a taxi and we go to the malt shop and the movies every weekend. I really hate that. No, it was, of course, white people stirring that up. And then, of course, black people. And what's funny is that segregation was enforced by the Supreme Court and the federal government. It says, no, you don't have to have integration. You can have separate but equal. Here's the problem. If you had an actual city, black community that was a part of a white city, they would, of course, take all of the taxes from the black community and spend it on Main Street, white part of town. So now Main Street looks lovely. Main Street has palm trees in the middle of it. The sidewalks are all nice and even. All the street lamps work. But for some reason in the black community, you don't have that at all. But the black people are paying all the taxes. More racism. This is racism 2.0. Then you have the civil rights movement that completely gutted and destroyed all the black communities. That's what the civil rights movement did. It didn't do anything else. There was no progressivism towards equality and diversity. Complete lie. Black people already worked with white people. They just were not allowed to go into white establishments. They were allowed to go into white establishments and spend their money, but they had to sit in the back. They had to come in through the back door, through the filthy alleys where they threw out the dishwater and the toilet water and stuff like that. They had to drink out of fountains that were not held up to standard. And that's exactly what it was. And people are so confused. They say, black people are terrible. Look at their communities. Well, black people pay taxes. You already know that the poor pay more taxes than anybody else, right? As far as when you're hit with taxes, the poor are hit the worst. Although you can have something that says, if you're super duper rich, you pay 50% in taxes. In income, well, they don't say stuff like that. They don't actually tell you that part. But if you're wealthy, 99% of your money isn't through income. It's through investment, which is not taxed nowhere near 50%, not even close. Until Obama took office and upped the capital gains tax. Capital gains was dirt cheap. That's why I said the poor pay more in taxes as far as being hit the hardest. And the poor don't have accountants who read all of the laws, all of the loopholes to reduce taxes. So this whole notion that, the rich are pay more, no, they're not hit the hardest. They pay more than anybody else in actual dollars, but they're not hit the hardest. So we have desegregation hit. Black people are allowed into white stores. Literally, black people then went to the white stores where all of the tax dollars went into the community. You had the nice streets and you had the palm trees in the middle and the sidewalks were nice and even. And you had the street lamps and, of course, cops, beat the hell out of black people walking around. Negro, you cannot be here after 5 p.m. But officer, I literally just got out of my job. No, doesn't matter. Beat. Club. Or shoot. Or dog. And then you have the lovely Richard Nixon targeting black people and saying that it was black people that started all the anti-war riots. Let me tell you. Let me say this again, and I'll say it again and again and kill you until you get it through your thick head. There are not that many black people in the United States. If you look at a demographic map of the United States, you will see that black people are actually concentrated in the South. Concentrated. So a demonstration in California, Nevada, Chicago is not going to be filled with black people. Oh, I know you say, but we're talking about 1950, 1960, 1970. There were no black people there. Go look at a demographic chart of 1960, 1970, Chicago. Wasn't black. Detroit wasn't black. Upping the demographics of Chicago and Detroit and the like happened after white flight. You have to put all of these pieces into the puzzle to get a clear picture of what's going on. So once again, we have the government targeting black people, this time to throw them in jail. And you have out and out open policies of saying we are going to throw black people in jail as much as possible. Even so, 99% of black people are not in jail. And yet we still have these idiots who were raised by some bigoted family to say that, oh, black people are violent. Still, till this day, 99% of black people are not in jail. Yes, there's a lot of black people in jail, but it's not more than 1% of the black population. You can't do math for some reason today. I don't understand it. So we have the Richard Nixon policy and the Kennedy policy. Oh, I know. Black people worship Kennedy for some reason, but I did a video already on him, and of course all the black people said, oh no, you can't disparage the name of Kennedy. Master's so good to us. He didn't pass not one single piece of legislation for civil rights. His brother did. He did not pass any piece of legislation. His brother is the one who assisted all of the whole civil rights thing, all of the good parts of the government coming to the assistance of black people. His brother, not him. So if you want to have a Kennedy on your wall, don't put JFK up there, put Robert up there. If you absolutely must have a Kennedy on your wall, put Robert up there. That I will agree with. But it was the after he got shot, he was the vice president who passed all the civil rights legislation. And Johnson is the same person who says, I will have every nigger voting Democrat. Remember, black people, we're Republican. More government racism. So you actually have the racist party getting black people to vote for the racist party. It's genius. I know. I will kill, murder, rape their entire population, and then tell them that it was us who benevolently did, but no Democrat voted for any of those. So no Democrats voted for the abolishment of slavery. No Democrat voted for the civil rights, or most of the civil rights was not voted in by Democrats. It was always Republican. But still, even so, Johnson got the niggers to vote for Democrats. Oh my goodness. If I could ever devise a scheme so dastardly, I would. Then we move up to the Clinton era. And under Clinton, we had more clandestine, secret medical stuff performed on black people than ever in the history of the United States. Oh, we're not talking about the Tuskegee Airmen, but we're talking about widespread, all sorts of secret. I've already made a video on it. And even the conspiracy theorists saying that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton should be held accountable for those experiments performed on black populations. Oh, we have a building, a project building, a public housing building filled with black people. Let's pour this gas into the building and see what happens. That was under your first black president, yo. Why was he the first black president? Because he played the saxophone? Black people, I go back to Johnson. I will have these niggers voting for Democrats for the rest of their life. And you fall for it. You still fall for it. So after 60 years of voting Democrat, what have you achieved? The income gap is on par with white people, but the wealth gap has widened. Understand that income and wealth are two different things. I already did a video on it. That is racism in the United States. The average white person has zero power nor zero clue how to go about being as dastardly, conniving, and evil, and stealing your labor, stealing your energy, stealing your time than the government. And they don't have the power of the gun, the police, to force you to give away your stuff as black people. That's racism. Now, are there white bigots all over the place? Yeah. There's black bigots all over the place, but I think black bigotry is reactionary. That means that there was a stimulus and black people are reacting to that stimulus. That means that black people very often, even if they're rich, we have Bryant Gumbel reporting that he suffers from racism all the time. As if people don't recognize him, he suffers because he is just a black guy. We have, who else? All of these high profile, well-spoken, rich black people in the mainstream media have all confessed that they have had to deal with racism on a personal, or bigotry on a personal basis all the time. There is no escape from it. So if you meet a black guy who's bigoted, you should probably remember this video and go, oh, Shakaama told me about this. Oh, yes. Okay, I see. Because we're not born bigoted. We really aren't. If you get a white baby and a black baby, they hug each other and or rustle and tussle and what have you, all, without any sort of, it's the teaching of the parents or their own personal experiences. We already did a video where the girl got into the car after school and she was crying. The mother said, what's going on? And she said, the people said I was dirty, and the people said they don't want to play with me and they don't want to invite me to the party. I did a video on it. These are the personal experiences that black children have to deal with even today. As much as you want to say, oh no, the racism is over. That's what black people have to deal with, even as children. I already did a video saying, how old does racism creep up into a human's life in the United States? And the researchers found that the magic number is 3 years old. That is ridiculous. This is why I want to buy an island and homeschool my children whenever I get married. That is ridiculous. I want to protect my children from racism until they're at least, 50? No. Well, at least 18, and then you have to go to college or something like that, or learn a trade or something. And then they're probably going to encounter it probably immediately. As soon as they get off the boat from the island, they're going to be like, finally, I'm away from that island. Get out of here, nigger. There you go. There you have it. And they're going to be like, what's that word? What does that mean? Here, I'll beat it into you. Dad, I want to come back to the island. No, you're grown now. I'll send a bodyguard, but that's about it. Anyway, that's it. Thank you all for listening. Like the video, share the video. Now, there's black people who are going to say, you're giving white people a pass. No, I'm not giving white people a pass. I said there's bigoted white people. There's bigoted black people. So you can use the word bigot all over the place. Bigot. But racism, you need to save that for the government. Most of you were forced into going along with racism by law with the government. You still are. There are still implementations of laws that actually look innocent that come out as being racist. And the medical community is the absolute worst when it comes to dealing with black people. They steal our organs. Oh, that's rampant. In fact, there's an entire ring of kidnapping. They don't kidnap black people to get money. They kidnap black people to get organs because black people are not seen as human even today. Although you see the pyramids, and the pyramids are all over Africa. Don't talk about Egypt. You see the remnants of empires all over Africa. Finally, we have an educational system online that bypasses all of the bigotry and white supremacy that you were taught in school. You don't have to remain ignorant. And still today, people say, we saved these people from grass huts. First of all, grass huts are all over the planet. It's called thatched roof. Great Britain is full of them, filled with them. And in fact, you pay a lot of money to have somebody repair your thatched roof. And they're hundreds of years old, right? But in Africa, you have cities that look like New York, San Francisco, San Diego, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, cities. It's 2016. You do not have to remain ignorant. Nigeria is the largest economy in all of Africa. Do you think they're in grass huts? They have oil, you ignorant people. I mean, you're just stupid because you want to be stupid. Come on now. And that includes black people. The black people are fed into the entire lie about it. Oh yeah, Africa's in grass huts. You're stupid. You're foolish. Thank you for watching the Shakaama Live Show.